Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unfiltered Discussions. You might see some new faces today staring at you if you were on the screen, or you may, if you're on a podcast, be hearing us in our voices. So we have some new faces. Please certainly go to our website at unfiltereddiscussions.com if you want to learn more about their background, why they care, and why they are here. That is your little bit of homework if you care. Today, we have all decided that the topic we are going to discuss is falling apart. We are noticing from the various angles and crooks and crannies in our world that we're noticing that people are falling apart. Some companies are falling apart. Heck, the world's even joining in and falling apart. So we kind of have some thoughts about what we see from our own point of view, and then kind of how we're all personally managing the falling apart individual, company, or world. So welcome. Peter, do you want to start us off today with your depths of wisdom?
Yeah, that's called gray hair, Kelly, and thank you. And I want to welcome our new faces and voices today, and Jenni George, Phil Richmond, and Cody Creelman. Falling apart. I would suggest that COVID created a certain level of uncertainty because of the pandemic. But I think right now, the world news, the veterinary news has created a significant level of uncertainty for practices, for industry, for even the people with all the big money. And I really do think that we feel it in practices. The owners of hospitals feel it. There's a trickle-down effect, because I think what happens is many times the leadership within the practices carry global issues into the business. And so what the owners do is they create discussion and disruption and discomfort. But I really do think that there's this tremendous feeling of uncertainty. There's this hole in the pit of my stomach right now that just needs to be filled in, because it just, you get in a car and there's people driving around crazy. You go into a store and people are all upset by everything. And I know that many of the front desk at many veterinary hospitals are dealing with clients who are either internal or external stressors, and we can combine the American stock market with all of this. So I really do think that this feeling of falling apart is, a lot of it's just due to increasing uncertainty with world news, business news, finance, weather. I mean, it snowed on Halloween in Chicago, and it was 85 degrees in Southern California. So I'm eager to hear input from the new faces or the new kids on the block about what you're perceiving, because we've got 4 time zones that are all part of the conversation, all corners of the U.S. So whomever wants to jump in and talk about it, I'd love to hear your input.
So it's interesting. We didn't have this session planned before what I did this morning, but this morning I actually planned my funeral with my benefits advisor. And the reason that I planned my funeral with my benefits advisor today, so my plan is this. It's call Jillian, call my benefits person who has this full list of everything. We just spent 2 hours going through, what are we going to do if Cody dies? Which sounds really macabre and scary, right? But on the big picture, I'm not seeing that level of stuff going on here in Canada. So I think we are pretty shielded right now in comparison. That sounds horrible. And I'm not at all experiencing that within the practice or within my customers. It seems like business as usual, but we work really hard. So it's business as usual as well, right? We work really hard on the team and really hard on customer satisfaction. But the reason that I was planning my funeral is 2 weeks ago, one in Canada, and you guys will know this one from in Florida. I had 2 friends who had people murdered in their vet clinics. And that's what started the conversation with my practice leadership of like, what happens if Cody dies? And, I just wanted to execute on that. And it made me think really, really hard on like, some of the stuff that my friends had to go through 2 weeks ago, because like our emergency disaster response plan as a vet clinic is literally bullshit in comparison to what they had to actually deal with when their teammates were shot in the clinic. Like that, I don't know, you guys probably didn't hear about the Alberta one, so the one that's like 45 minutes away. A TA was murdered because her boyfriend tried to get her to steal narcotics from the practice during the shift. Like it was literally during the shift, out in the parking lot. Her team worked on her. It was just like an absolute disaster. And then my friend Adam owns the practice in Florida. So I talked to him the day after about what was going on, and like my heart is broken, right? Like just like the like what is going on? That happened in veterinary medicine in the last 2 weeks. People are getting murdered inside of vet clinics.
So Cody, if I can follow up on that, is that Adam, Dan, and Sean was actually a dear friend of mine who was shot in that hospital, and I handled the crisis response and helped Adam and helped Dan through that, and actually just saw Dan Mark Walder on Saturday. And you know, it was interesting is as we were talking about this, and I just went to the celebration of life of my friend. Sean was a practice manager when the reason why I do well-being in this profession is I was suicidal in 2008. I had an alcohol and substance use disorder, and thank God my colleagues recognized what was going on with me and got me into treatment and saved my life. And I think about that collegiality, and Sean was the practice manager when I first got out of treatment and went into practice again. And it's interesting, and I mean, there's no coincidences why we're discussing this. And what I would say is the interesting thing for me is that I was struck by not only the tragedy, but also the almost the dichotomy of the beauty of these two things happening together, is that seeing the community in Florida come together. And I am not at all dismissing the horrible tragedy of us losing a colleague in that manner, but also that we see we're inundated with this negativity bias. And it's, you know, in veterinary medicine, as much as it's, you know, it's like watching the news, is that we hear all the horrible things in veterinary medicine. And I'm not saying that it's not admirable or that we need to address those things, that we need to address, outside capital coming in, or we need to address sustainability in the profession, but we also need to look at the things that uplift us in the profession as well, and to give those things equal time. And so I just have to say this is still raw for me because I just came back. Saturday went to the celebrations of life, and I just think that is also something that we talk about, and just the relationships and the talks that I've gotten to have with Adam and with Dan, and and just seeing everybody come together and what Sean meant to everyone. It was just very personal. I didn't know we were going to have this specific discussion around this, Cody, and and it's just, here we are, two vets, who know the same people, who have been impacted by the same thing, that were thousands of miles away, and it just goes to show too how connected we are in this profession. And that was something that really hit home with me, is that seeing these veterinary professionals thousands of miles away, and all of us coming together. And just, I think it's something that we share as a profession that other large professions don't.
It's such a small world, right? It is. Our profession is just this big, period.
I think too, we're talking about it within the veterinary profession, but it's just this uncertainty in everywhere. We recently had a shooting in Maine. My clients knew some of the people who were killed. The scariest one for me was I was getting my hair dyed, and I get a text from my 16-year-old, and she says, "Mom, we're on shutdown and I'm locked in an office." And my heart stopped, because I'm like, this is it. This is that phone call that no parent ever wants to have. And I said, and I was texting her, and I'm like, "Is your phone on silent?" "Yes." "Are you with your teacher?" "Yes." "What do you know?" "I know the police are here." "How do you know the police are there? Are they in the building?" "I don't know if they're in the building." And we're going through this, and then she stops texting. And I'm like, what do I do? I want to go get in my car and drive to her high school, but I need to stay calm because this is life. This is what we now have to deal with, is this constant uncertainty. And she ended up being fine. It was an ex-student who got into the school who had just gotten out of jail and was trying to find another ex-student. Both had graduated for drug money. So, you know, obviously not the brightest of people and poor choices because now he's back in jail. But it's just one of those things that it's constant. It is in the news. It is in our industry. It is everywhere. And we were talking about this. I was talking about this with my team. We're in a very sheltered area in New Hampshire. It is very rural. We don't have a lot of diversity. New Hampshire has a very low crime rate. You know, we feel very safe. But something happens and all of a sudden you don't feel safe. And I was talking about this with my team member, and I just said, I refuse to live in fear. I refuse to stop going to work because I'm too scared. I refuse to, you know, stop letting my child go to school because I'm too scared. I refuse to stop going to church because I'm too scared. I am not going to live my life in fear. I'm not going to allow myself to be a victim of these horrible things that may or may not happen and that I have no control over. And I'm going to focus on the things that I can control. And that's what we talk about in our team meetings is, you know, sometimes you got to shut off the news. Sometimes you got to go for a walk in the woods. Sometimes you have to separate yourself from these things and say, yes, this happened. Yes, this is bad. That doesn't mean we live in a bad world. We live in a good world where bad things can happen. And sometimes they happen to people that we know. I also knew someone involved in the Florida shooting, one of the veterinarians who works at one of the sister hospital, who used to work with Sean as well. And again, like that's the three of us who all know somehow, right? 6 degrees of separation or whatever. But it just is one of those things that if we sit there and constantly worry about all of the horrible things that happen, that's all we're going to see. And so to me, I told my team, I refuse to be a victim. I'm going to keep doing my best. I'm going to keep, you know, trying to uplift the people around me, my team, my clients, everybody. I'm going to keep talking about the absolutely amazing things that we do in this industry. And I am not going to be afraid. And I'm not going to stop sending my kids to school, even though you don't know what's going to happen, you know? And so it's just, I don't know. To me, I have to reframe my mind to not allow that to take over.
So Jenni, you kind of, I think in my world, at least hit the nail on the head, because I say the same thing all the time. I may not be able to control the events around me, but I get to control myself. I get to choose my reaction. I get to choose my emotions to the reaction, and I get to create and manifest to the best of my abilities the world I want to live in. Every morning I get up and say to myself, how do I want to live today? And I don't mean what shirt I'm putting on or what am I having for lunch. I mean my internal landscape. How do I want to live today? You know, today's answer was joy and abundance. And abundance isn't necessarily wealth. It is the people around you and, you know, the abundance of opportunities. I mean, abundance can be all over the place. But with all this uncertainty, with all the tragedy, with all the scary shit going on out there, how do you want to respond to it? I think you totally, at least for me, you know, resonate very well because, you know, we're looking at the world the same way. I get to control what I read. I can only control the world around me. I cannot control anybody else except me. I cannot control world governments, for example. That's way above my pay grade. That is, you know, that's outside my skill set. So what can I control? Who can I influence locally? How do I raise my child? How do I support my community? How do I support my employees around me? Those are all things that I can move the needle to the positive today, right? And I would encourage everybody out there to just stop and think for a minute. How do you want to live today? Do you want to live in fear? And like Jenni is saying, no, hard stop, no to living in fear. I'm not going to do it. It's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's hard to say no to the fear because it's insidious and it creeps in and that adrenaline rush snaps and then you're off to the races, right? But how do you want to live today? Anybody else in the room have an answer to that?
Well, I would just suggest part of the messaging is that it's in all of us who are in the small business world, it's up to us as leaders to also help those around us who are feeling challenged and uncertain. Because no matter how difficult the world is, they look up to us. They look up to us as leaders. And I think the messaging that we provide them and the support that we can provide them, I think the greatest lesson I took out of COVID as the executive director of SCVMA at that point in time is the thing that the veterinary profession needed most was empathy. And so I led the entire association for 2+ years with empathic leadership, which meant reaching out to people, getting on the phone, doing town halls. And I think it's important not to wait as leaders, but to take a proactive approach that says, you know, sometimes life sucks, but we're here to help and to provide EAPs and other resources to help people who you might think are falling apart have resources from that standpoint. So I think one of my bottom line messages to the listeners is, as leaders, it's your responsibility to take care of yourself first, but not to forget to take care of your team and give them some positivity from your standpoint.
Any other closing remarks?
I just, I had the opportunity to speak to a group of early career veterinarians about 3 days ago. And I put this thought exercise to them. And I said, you can have one of two superpowers. You can have a red cape, and with the red cape, you cure all the ills of veterinary medicine. We get rid of student debt. We have equality. We have diversity. We have inclusion. We have, our pay scales are appropriate. All of the things that we hear about are cured. Or you can wear the green cape, and with the green cape, similar somewhat to what Peter was saying, but that we maximize cognitive empathy. We maximize the best parts of humanity. We maximize collegiality, that we're collegial, huh?
Collegiality.
Collegiality. Is that, yeah, we thank you for the in speech edit on that, my friend. But we increase these things to their maximum level. And if you can only pick one of those, which one would you pick? And the interesting thing about the exercise, of course, is that there isn't a right answer, is that we need both. And so that we do lean in heavily into fixing the ills, that we have a problem, a root cause analysis, problem focused approach to veterinary medicine, where we also need and have to have, where we look into what's called appreciative inquiry, or we elevate the good parts of the profession as well. And that both of those things need to be done to create a sustainable profession for all of us.
Well, wonderful. Maybe we'll leave it there today as an exercise for people to do and muse over in their own time. Until the next Unfiltered Discussions, everybody, thanks for coming today, Peter, Phil, Jenny, and Cody. We appreciate every single listener out there, and we hope we encouraged you to think a little bit differently than you started 20 minutes ago. Until next time, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Kelly.